I'll never forget the sound of my heels clicking against the marble as I walked into the conference room. The air felt cold, the silence heavy. Jason sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of professional concern. 2 members of legal flanked him like bodyguards. "Kate," he said, his voice eerily calm, "we've discovered some troubling information." My stomach dropped as he slid a folder across the table. Inside was an email with my signature authorizing the $10 million derivatives trade, a trade I had explicitly warned against in my risk assessment. "I never sent this," I whispered. Jason's eyes hardened. "The board has seen all the evidence. You bypassed compliance protocols and falsified risk reports." I opened my mouth to protest, but security was already at the door. "Your access has been revoked," Jason said with a hint of a smile. "We'll need your badge." I felt dizzy as the security guard approached, hand outstretched. The badge I'd worn proudly for 4 years suddenly felt heavy around my neck. Removing it was like severing a limb. "This is a mistake," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Jason didn't bother responding. He'd already turned back to his laptop, dismissing me from his life as easily as he dismissed my career. The elevator doors closed on my career. 17 floors down, my badge deactivated with a sad little beep before I even reached the lobby. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone, scrolling through saved emails, trying to find my original risk assessment. Nothing. My sent folder was missing weeks of correspondence. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead as I hurried through the revolving doors. Outside, the New York traffic roared past, oblivious. I hailed a cab with trembling fingers and gave my address. As the yellow car pulled away from the curb, I turned to see Jason watching from the glass lobby, phone pressed to his ear. His expression was clear. Checkmate. I sank into the seat, mind racing. How had he managed to doctor those emails? Who else was involved? The questions swirled as the taxi weaved through traffic, carrying me away from the career I'd spent years building. My phone buzzed with a text from my team member, Samantha. "What happened?" "Security's clearing your desk." Then another, "Jason just told everyone you're gone. Something about violating protocols?" I couldn't bring myself to reply. The cab driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "Bad day, huh?" he asked. I laughed bitterly. "You have no idea." My apartment felt too quiet, too empty. I immediately booted up my personal laptop, typing frantically as I tried to log into my work accounts. Access denied. Email blocked. Cloud storage locked. Jason had been thorough. I tried to breathe through the panic that threatened to overwhelm me. "Think, Kate," I whispered to myself. "Wait." My external backup drive. 2 weeks ago I'd saved key files as part of my monthly routine. My hands shook as I plugged it in, scrolling through folders. Most were corrupted or empty. But there, a single audio file marked "Late Call, JM." I hit play, and Jason's voice filled the room. "Nobody needs to know the board didn't approve this. It's a golden opportunity." My breath caught. The recording cut off abruptly, but it was something. Evidence. I played it again, straining to hear any detail that might help me. The timestamp showed 2:17 a.m., a call no one would make unless they were hiding something. I opened my journal where I'd documented my concerns about that trade. Every detail was there. My explicit warning against the move, Jason's dismissal of the risks, my insistence on a formal review. If only I could prove it wasn't just my word against his. I needed more proof. I texted Nathan from IT. We'd had lunch together for months, complained about office politics, shared jokes, need urgent help recovering some deleted emails, life or death. I stared at my phone until his reply appeared. New directive from leadership. All IT requests go through compliance now. Sorry, Kate. Then a second message. I've been moved to the Singapore office, effective immediately. My phone slipped from my fingers. They were erasing all connections, isolating me. When I picked it up again, I noticed something strange. The camera light on my laptop was on. Someone was watching. I slammed it shut, heart pounding. How did they get remote access to my personal computer? I grabbed a sticky note and covered the camera lens. My apartment suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable. I moved to the kitchen, away from windows, wondering if they could hear me too. Jason wasn't just framing me. He was watching me unravel. Every electronic device suddenly seemed threatening. I unplugged my smart speaker, turned off my phone, and sat in the darkening room, surrounded by silence. No one would help me. No one would believe me. For the first time in my professional life, I was completely alone. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications. Finance blogs were running stories about my mental breakdown and erratic behavior leading up to the failed trade. Screenshots of Slack messages showed me supposedly pushing for the risky investment, ignoring warnings. Messages I never sent. Comments poured in, another diversity hire disaster. Women can't handle the pressure. I felt sick reading them. The character assassination was surgical. My phone rang. Human resources. Kate, we've arranged a psychological evaluation. The firm is concerned about your well-being. Their voice dripped with fake concern. I ended the call, fighting back tears. They weren't just ruining my career, they were destroying my reputation. I tried calling former colleagues, but no one answered. My LinkedIn connections were rapidly dropping. By noon, my profile had been flagged for suspicious activity. They were erasing me from the industry, one digital footprint at a time. I looked out my window and spotted a man in a dark suit sitting in a parked car, pretending to read a newspaper. My throat tightened. They were watching me in person now, not just through my devices. I needed to get out of here. I couldn't stay in my apartment, not when they could hack my laptop. I packed a bag and took a train to my father's place upstate. Dad asked no questions when he saw my face, just made coffee and kept the TV on sports channels instead of financial news. Around sunset, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street. It stayed there for hours, engine occasionally running. "Don't go near the windows," Dad whispered, closing the blinds. That night, my burner email account pinged with a message. "I know you didn't authorize the trade. I can help. Midnight, 16th and Grand. Come alone. No phone." I stared at the words until they blurred. A trap or my only hope? Dad watched me pack a small bag. "Whatever trouble you're in, fight smart," he said, pressing pepper spray into my hand. "Call me when you can." I nodded, throat tight with unshed tears. Someone believed me. Maybe that was enough. I slipped out the back door, while Dad distracted the SUV with a loud, staged argument on the front porch. My heart racing, I disappeared into the woods behind the house, making my way to the small town where I could catch a bus back to the city. The street corner at 16th and Grand was deserted, except for a figure in a hooded jacket. My heart hammered against my ribs as I approached. The figure kept their face turned away from the streetlight. "Are you Kate Morgan?" The voice was female, deliberately pitched low. I nodded, staying out of arm's reach. "I'm Leah from compliance. I've been monitoring Jason's trades for months." She handed me a small USB drive. "He's done this before, 3 times at least. Always blamed someone else." I reached for the drive, but she held tight. "Be careful. They're watching your devices, your father's house, everything." She released the drive and disappeared into the shadows. Back in my hotel room, I plugged it in. Password protected. Encrypted. Useless. I threw it across the room in frustration, then immediately scrambled to retrieve it. This tiny drive might be my only hope of salvation, if only I could unlock its secrets. I examined it under the desk lamp. Standard black plastic, no markings except for a tiny scratch near the connector. Something about it seemed familiar. Then it hit me. The scratch formed a pattern. Not random damage, but deliberate. A clue to the password? I needed someone who could make sense of this. I needed a tech expert, someone who could crack the encryption without leaving digital fingerprints. There was only one person I trusted with that kind of skill. My ex-boyfriend Malik. We'd ended badly 3 years ago when his hacking hobby crossed ethical lines. I hesitated over the message. "Need your expertise. Sensitive situation. Life-changing." His reply came within minutes. "Still getting into trouble, Katie? Some things never change. Harrison Hotel, room 412. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. I closed my eyes, knowing what it would cost my pride to ask for his help. But I had no choice. Jason had the firm's resources. I had only my determination and one encrypted USB drive. The hotel was a budget place in Queens, far from the financial district's watchful eyes. As I approached the front desk, I used the name he'd given me. "I'm here to see Mr. Smith," I said, the fake name feeling awkward on my tongue. The clerk barely looked up. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, checking each landing before continuing up. On the 4th floor, I paused outside room 412, my hand hovering over the door. 3 years since I'd seen him. 3 years of silence after he'd broken my trust. But now I needed him more than ever. Malik's hotel room was filled with computer equipment and empty coffee cups. He looked older, more serious than I remembered. "So," he said, turning the USB drive in his hands, "someone at Varelli wants you to take the fall for their mistake." He plugged in the drive, fingers flying across the keyboard. Military-grade encryption, not amateur work. Hours passed in tense silence as he worked. Finally, the screen filled with files. "Got it," he whispered. We stared at spreadsheets showing altered trade logs, modified timestamps, offshore transfers to accounts with Jason's initials. But the most damning evidence was a folder labeled Cleanup Crew, internal communications between Jason and executives. My hands shook as we opened it. "This goes higher than just Jason," Malik said softly. The timestamps revealed a pattern of risky trades followed by doctored records, all pointing to the same conclusion. Jason had been gambling with company money for months, and the executives knew. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Not just one fraudulent trade, but dozens spread over the past year. Jason hadn't just framed me. He'd been setting me up as his fall guy for months, carefully positioning me to take the blame when his house of cards inevitably collapsed. The folder contained a private Slack channel, messages between Jason and two C-suite executives discussing how to manage the situation and maintain plausible deniability. One message from the CFO read, "Same process as before. IT will handle the technical cleanup." I felt sick. They'd done this multiple times, sacrificed employees to protect the firm's reputation. "Jason's being groomed for partner," Malik pointed out, scrolling through the messages. "They can't let him take the blame for a $10 million loss right before the vote." I sat back, stunned. "They knew," I whispered. "They always knew it. Was him." As we scrolled through more messages, a notification popped up. A new post in the same channel, timestamped just minutes ago. Jason had written, "Morgan situation under control. Need to accelerate partner vote before she finds support." The CFO replied instantly, "Board meeting moved to next Friday. This ends now." My week-long window had just shrunk to days. I felt the walls closing in. "They're covering their tracks," Malik said, pointing to another message about server purges. "Soon there won't be any evidence left." I gripped the edge of the desk. "Then we better move fast." A new message appeared in the channel from Trina, my closest friend at the firm. "Kate's gone offline. Sources say she's meeting with someone. We need to shut this down now." My blood turned to ice. How did they know? Malik yanked out cords, shutting down systems. "Your phone," he barked. "Did you bring it?" I shook my head, but then remembered. The hotel had asked for a number at check-in. I'd given them my real one. "We need to move," Malik said, throwing equipment into a bag. The laptop he'd been using suddenly whined, its fans spinning wildly. "Meh." He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door as the laptop's battery exploded with a pop and burst of smoke. "They just tried to remotely overload it," he explained as we raced down the emergency stairs. "They know exactly where we are." The hallway cameras caught our escape. I pulled my hood up, but it was too late. Our faces would be on Varelli's security feed within minutes. We burst through the exit door into the alley behind the hotel. "Keep your head down," Malik whispered, as a black sedan slowly cruised past the mouth of the alley. I pressed myself against the brick wall, hardly daring to breathe. "We need new tech, new location, new plan," Malik said once the car passed, "and we need it now." We ditched the hotel, spending the night in a 24-hour diner. No credit cards, no phones. Malik explained between coffee refills that Jason was up for final partner review in less than 30 days. Once he's confirmed, the firm will protect him completely. Partners are untouchable. I pushed cold eggs around my plate. "So we have a month to expose him." Malik looked grim. "Less. They're accelerating the process because of the trade fallout. The shareholder meeting for the final vote is in 10 days. 10 days to gather enough evidence, find a way to present it, and survive the fallout. We need to get inside the firm's systems again," I said. Malik shook his head. "They've locked everything down. We need another approach." I stared out the window at the dawn breaking over the city. "We need to make them look at us." Malik raised an eyebrow. "You want to poke the bear?" I nodded. "Sometimes the only way out is through. We make them react, make them sloppy." The waitress refilled our cups, eyeing our disheveled appearance suspiciously. I didn't blame her. We looked like we'd been running from something, because we had. If we go public, Malik warned, they'll come at you with everything they've got. I met his gaze steadily. Let them try. Our plan was simple but risky. I would leak one piece of evidence online. A single altered email that showed Jason overriding my risk assessment. Not enough to prove everything, but enough to raise questions. Just enough bait to make them nervous. Malik used a series of anonymous accounts to post it where financial journalists would see it. We watched from a public library computer as the tweet gained traction. Market watchdogs started asking questions. Varelli Capital's stock price dipped slightly. They'll respond, Malik predicted. They have to. He was right. That evening, Jason appeared on a financial podcast, his voice steady as he declared, Kate Morgan is a dangerous, unstable woman who's trying to deflect from her catastrophic failure. The firm stands by our integrity. He was good, concerned yet confident. But I noticed the slight tremor in his hand as he adjusted his tie. He was scared. The podcast host pressed, What about the email showing you approved the trade? Jason smiled tightly. Clearly falsified. Kate's desperation is showing. I watched his performance with a mixture of rage and satisfaction. He was playing right into our hands, coming out publicly when he should have stayed quiet. The more visible he made himself, the harder the fall would be. His arrogance would be his undoing. Jason didn't stop with the podcast. The next day, he held a press briefing where he showed footage of me shouting during a meeting. This is Kate Morgan 2 months before the trading incident, he explained smoothly. Her erratic behavior was concerning, but we wanted to give her a chance. I stared at the screen in horror. The footage was real, but completely misleading. That meeting had been about sexual harassment from a client. I was defending an intern. The video had been edited to remove all context. But something about the camera angles struck me. It wasn't from the room's security camera. Someone had recorded it secretly from a specific seat at the table. I knew that perspective. Trina, I whispered. That was filmed from Trina's seat. Malik frowned. You trust her? I thought about our 5 years of friendship, lunches, after-work drinks, weekend calls. I did, I replied, voice breaking. I need to talk to her. She might know more than she's letting on. Malik looked skeptical. It could be a trap. I nodded. Almost certainly, but she's also our best connection to what's happening inside Varelli right now. I stood up, determination hardening my resolve. I'm going to confront her. I found Trina at her regular gym the next morning. She dropped her water bottle when she saw me. You shouldn't be here, she hissed, looking around frantically. I backed her into a corner of the locker room. Why did you film me that day? The harassment meeting? Her eyes filled with tears. Jason has dirt on everyone, Kate. He found out about my undisclosed outside consulting. Said he'd report me to the ethics committee. Her hands shook. I didn't know he'd use it like this. I swear. I believed her. Jason was a master manipulator who found everyone's weakness. Help me stop him, I pleaded. Trina hesitated, then whispered, Check the virtual meeting archive. Jason doesn't know I still have access. Look at the quarterly planning session from March 12th. She scribbled login credentials on a gym membership card. I'll deny everything if they catch you. A gym attendant walked in. Everything okay here? She asked, eyeing us suspiciously. Trina nodded, quickly walking away. Good luck, she mouthed as she left. I slipped the card into my pocket, feeling a small spark of hope. Maybe I wasn't completely alone after all. Outside the gym, I spotted another black sedan idling at the curb. I ducked into a coffee shop, using the back exit to avoid being followed. Back at our new hideout, a motel paid for in cash, Malik and I combed through dozens of recorded Zoom meetings using Trina's credentials. The March 12th quarterly planning session seemed normal at first. Budget discussions, market projections. But 1 hour in, when most participants had left, Jason remained with senior partner Donovan. The Singapore numbers don't add up, Donovan said casually. Jason laughed. That's because they're completely fabricated. Haspeza. I've been redirecting some of the loss into offshore accounts. Board will never know. Donovan chuckled. Just make sure it's clean. I gasped, staring at the screen. This was explicit securities fraud caught on camera. But as I leaned closer, I noticed something in the corner of Jason's office. A small black device with a blinking light. A separate recording device, filming everything. What is that? I asked, pointing to the screen. Malik zoomed in, his eyes widening. Someone was recording them, recording you. This is getting interesting. We replayed the footage multiple times, focusing on the device. That's high-end surveillance equipment, Malik said. Not something you'd buy at Best Buy. I stared at the blinking light, a question forming in my mind. Who else knew what Jason was doing, and why were they gathering evidence? That's a Vanguard micro-recorder, Malik said, zooming in on the image. High-end security equipment. We spent hours tracking down its serial number, visible in one clear frame. The recorder was registered to Richard Varelli, the firm's late co-founder who had died in a boating accident last year. Why would Jason keep recording equipment belonging to a dead man in his office? I wondered. Malik's research provided the answer. Richard Varelli had been investigating internal fraud before his death. The accident had never been fully explained. What if it wasn't an accident? Malik said quietly. More importantly, where was that recorder now? The firm's records showed all of Richard Varelli's belongings were stored in a secure room in the basement of the Varelli building. We had to get in. But how? Security would be watching for me. Every entrance would be monitored. There has to be a way, I muttered, pacing our small room. Something they wouldn't expect. Malik suddenly snapped his fingers. What's something that makes everyone leave a building at once? I stared at him, realization dawning. A fire drill. He nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. Exactly. And, according to the security schedule I just hacked, Varelli Capital has one tomorrow at 10 a.m. Getting into Varelli Capital was nearly impossible with security looking for me. But luck intervened. The quarterly fire drill was scheduled for the next morning. During the evacuation, I slipped in through a service entrance, wearing a maintenance uniform Malik had somehow procured. While hundreds of employees stood on the sidewalk, I descended to the basement storage. The Varelli room required a key card, but Malik had prepared for that too. A cloned card that would work once before triggering alarms. The room was filled with labeled boxes. I found office items and dug through papers, awards, and framed photos until my fingers touched something solid. The recorder was there, still working, with hours of footage no one had reviewed. As I pocketed it, a shrill alarm pierced the silence. Someone had noticed the unauthorized entry. I ran for the service elevator, heart pounding in my ears. The doors seemed to take forever to close. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. I pressed myself against the wall, praying the elevator would arrive before security found me. Finally, the doors slid open. I dove inside, jabbing frantically at the ground floor button. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of a security guard rounding the corner, radio in hand. I'd been spotted. I barely made it out, ducking behind a dumpster as security flooded the loading dock. A voice behind me whispered, "Follow me now." I whirled to see a uniformed guard I didn't recognize. Was it a trap? I had no choice. He led me through a maze of service corridors to an exit on the far side of the building. Before I could thank him, he pressed a note into my hand. Not everyone is loyal to Jason. Some of us remember Richard Varelli's real legacy. He checked his watch. You have 72 hours before they wipe the backup servers. Everything will be gone. I clutched the recorder tightly. Why are you helping me? He looked away. Jason fired my brother last year, said he made trades my brother warned against. I nodded, understanding perfectly. Inside the recorder was exactly what we needed. Unedited conversations proving Jason's fraud. The guard glanced nervously at his radio. They're sweeping the building now. Go before they lock down the perimeter. I slipped out the door, disappearing into the crowd of returning employees. On the subway ride back to our hideout, I couldn't shake the feeling that Richard Varelli's death and Jason's fraud were connected. Had he discovered what Jason was doing and paid the ultimate price? The thought sent chills down my spine. Malik worked through the night, extracting audio files and matching them with the video evidence. We need to deliver this where they can't bury it, he said, eyes red from exhaustion. The shareholder meeting is virtual this year, a Zoom call with 200 participants. A plan formed. Malik would create a program that would hijack the screen sharing function during Jason's presentation. When activated, it would display our evidence in real time to every major shareholder. It was our only shot. As dawn broke, my burner phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Warning, PI spotted at your father's again. They're getting desperate. An hour later, a courier delivered a cease and desist letter to my father's house, threatening severe legal consequences if I spoke publicly about Varelli Capital. They were trying to scare me into silence. It had the opposite effect. My resolve hardened. Jason hadn't just attacked my career, he'd dragged my family into this. There would be no backing down now, no matter the risk. I called my father to warn him, instructing him to stay with my aunt for a few days. "Be careful, Katie," he said, his voice tight with worry. "These people play for keeps." I knew he was right. The stakes couldn't be higher, but neither could the cost of staying silent. The day of the shareholder meeting arrived. We set up in an abandoned office Malik had access to, surrounded by computers and backup power supplies. The meeting began with Jason looking confident, handsome in an expensive suit as he shared his screen to walk through impressive-looking projections. "Varelli Capital stands stronger than ever," he declared. That was our cue. Malik hit a key, and Jason's presentation vanished, replaced by our evidence. Emails, voice recordings, video clips, all time-stamped and organized. Gasps echoed through the speakers as shareholders saw Jason clearly telling Donovan, "The board are idiots. They'll eat whatever we serve them." Jason frantically tried to stop the stream, shouting about hackers and disgruntled employees, but it was too late. 200 of the most powerful people in finance were watching his crimes unfold in real time. I watched, heart racing, as Jason's carefully constructed world crumbled. His face contorted with rage as he realized what was happening. The very people he'd been deceiving were now witnessing his betrayal, unfiltered and undeniable. I spotted Richard Varelli's widow among the participants, her expression changing from shock to vindication. "This is for Richard too," I whispered, though no one could hear me. The evidence continued to play, damning conversation after damning conversation, each worse than the last. Chaos erupted. Shareholders demanded explanations. The general counsel announced he was recusing himself, effective immediately. The CFO's video feed suddenly went dark. Jason was screaming now, his carefully constructed facade crumbling as he threatened lawsuits against everyone. But Malik had planned for this. He was already live-streaming the entire meltdown to financial Twitter. Within minutes, Varelli collapse was trending. Trading of Varelli stock was halted. Reporters scrambled to cover the story, and my phone rang with a number I recognized, the Securities and Exchange Commission. "Miss Morgan? We've been monitoring the situation. We'd like to speak with you immediately." I caught Malik's eye across the room. He gave me a thumbs up. "Yes," I told the SEC investigator. "I have everything you need." The investigator's tone was respectful, interested, so different from the dismissive way Jason had spoken to me just weeks ago. For the first time since that terrible day in the conference room, I felt a glimmer of hope. The truth was finally coming to light. As I arranged to meet with the SEC team, Malik pointed to his screen. Justice for Kate was trending now too, with former colleagues finally speaking out, confirming parts of my story. The tide had turned. The following weeks passed in a blur. Jason was arrested leaving his Hamptons house, charged with securities fraud, conspiracy, and data tampering. The CFO and legal team cut deals to testify against him. Varelli Capital's stock plummeted, and a major bank announced it was acquiring the troubled firm's assets. My name was cleared, not just cleared, but celebrated in some circles as a whistleblower who exposed corruption. Journalists wanted interviews, book deals were offered, and then came the letter from Varelli's new leadership, a settlement offer of $8.7 million for the damage to my career and reputation. The only condition, sign an NDA promising never to discuss what happened. I stared at the number, enough money to never work again. All I had to do was stay silent. The lawyer across the table smiled encouragingly. "It's a generous offer, Miss Morgan. Most people in your position would grab it immediately." I tapped my pen against the contract, thinking of all the other Kate Morgans out there, scapegoats who never got the chance to clear their names. I thought about Richard Varelli too, whose death still officially remained an accident. Would signing this NDA bury the truth forever? I couldn't let that happen. I rejected the NDA and settlement. Instead, I negotiated for a public apology and the right to tell my story. When the Senate Banking Committee invited me to testify about corporate whistleblower protections, I spent hours explaining how firms silence victims through legal intimidation and character assassination. My testimony helped shape new legislation protecting financial whistleblowers. Reporters asked if I'd return to Wall Street now that my name was cleared. The question made me laugh. I'm done with that world, I told them. 6 months later, I signed a lease on a small storefront by the harbor. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the water. The sign simply read, Kate's Coffee. No trading floors, no backstabbing colleagues, no millions at stake with every decision. Just quality beans, friendly customers, and peace of mind. Malik stopped by on opening day, ordered the most complicated drink on the menu, and left a generous tip. Who would have thought, he said, looking around the cozy space, that getting fired would lead to this? I smiled, wiping down the counter. Sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the first day of something better. The investigation into Richard Varelli's death had been reopened, with Jason now the prime suspect. Justice was working its slow but inevitable way forward. 1 year to the day after Jason's arrest, a package arrived at my cafe. No return address, just my name in block letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a page from my personnel file at Varelli showing psychological evaluations they'd planned to use against me. Attached was a note. They're regrouping under a new name. There's always another Jason. I should have been frightened, but instead I felt a strange calm. I tucked the note into my pocket and continued brewing the morning's first batch. The bell above the door jingled as my first customer entered. Beautiful morning, he said, not knowing who I was or what I'd been through. I smiled, pouring his coffee. Yes, it is. I'd taken down Jason once. If necessary, I could do it again. Some battles choose you. I was ready. Behind the counter, my phone buzzed with news alerts about a financial startup making waves with revolutionary risk assessment. I recognized some of the executive names, former Varelli employees. I sipped my coffee, watching the harbor. The fight for truth was never truly over, just on pause. And if they came for me again, well, I'd be waiting. The whistleblower legislation I'd helped create was my shield now. And I had something Jason never would, the strength that comes from standing on the right side of the truth.